again, everyone! So, I'm doing another budget cosplay makeover. Now, I wanted to go for something a bit trickier and also pretty recognisable, so I'm thinking Disney. Elsa was not going to be my first choice because honestly, a lot of the cheap costumes out there do just look really bad. I mean, I'm not even sure I could work with that. However, I got offered one for £3, kind of sight unseen deal. But I'm going to run with that, see how it turns up. And for the wig, I'm getting the cheapest wig I could find on eBay, which at the time of purchase was £4.70. I don't think they're justified in charging £7.50 as they now are. And this picture is probably going to be not at all representative of what I receive. This picture is definitely not going to be even remotely close. So yes, let's see what turns up. And here it is, worn, fresh out the bag. It's not awful, I mean the fit is actually pretty good. The bodice has no structure at all, which is a shame. I think I'm going to try and add some structure to that. Normally her bodice is sparkly all the way round, but this one stops where the cape starts. But then the cape is more behind, so you get these big bits that are just this same slightly stretchy satin as the rest of it. Although I do like the sequins down the front. It is slightly see-through though. The net sleeves are really itchy, and for some reason they've been sewn entirely in white, which really shows up badly. There are also these enormous holes under both arms, and I don't know whether that's meant to be for ease of movement or ventilation, or if I've just ripped it by trying it on. Either way, that's not great. The cape is actually a decent size, but for some reason the pattern is this gold and silver swirl pattern. I don't quite know where they're coming from with that. I might try and change that and do giant snowflakes over it or something. The wig, again, shiny, it's kind of untamed, it's going everywhere. And the braid is actually a decent thickness, at least for Elsa. It is held together with an elastic band, which I think is a bit of a shame. We'll definitely be changing that. But yes, here we go. Let's see what we can make of this. The first change is going to be a really simple one. The bodice was a bit shapeless, so underneath I'm going to be wearing a corset. This is just a cheap corset that I got off eBay for about £5 a while back. It's plastic boned, but it should provide enough structure considering that the dress itself is just a stretchy fabric. So with the corset on, we can see that it's not bulging anywhere now, and I'll be able to bring the sides in a little. This is quite stretchy, thankfully, so I don't have to worry too much about fit. I can make it quite snug around the corset. And then we'll get that hourglass figure going in, and it'll keep the whole thing looking a lot smoother and neater. It's also helping with the fact that this middle panel was quite see-through, and at least now I know I won't be flashing anything. For the bodice, I want to add a few more details, and I love how some people have done it with kind of rectangular sequins, but if I'm honest, they're quite expensive and I'm looking to do this as cheaply as possible. So what I've done is I went to my local scrap store and I got some kind of samples of blind fabric that are a little bit shimmery, and some cellophane wrapping type stuff. And all I'm doing is chopping them into the long rectangles, and then I'll be sewing each of those on as if they're a sequin. I also got some little packs of rhinestones and teeny tiny sparkles, and we'll probably glue those on for a little bit of extra pizzazz. I haven't got the corset on. I've taken some of the excess out the sides. I've just taken it in on both seams under the arms. I've just taken a couple of inches off each. Luckily it's stretchy, so we can take it off all in kind of one lump there and there without having to worry too much about the shape. I've also got loads of my long sequins cut out, And also got some rhinestones, another sequins that I picked up, which we'll probably add on top. I'm kind of arranging the sequins in a higgledy-piggledy brick pattern, like so. And then it's just going to be a case of spending the hours and hours required to actually sew them on. I'm going to sew them on by hand, one at a time. And yeah, I think I might feather them down so we've still got some of this original sequin pattern here. Well, it took a fair few hours, but I've got my homemade sequins all on now. I've left them a bit open at the front here where the sequin fabric is, because I quite like that. So I've gone all the way around the back. And I've kept them kind of all modelled in, so we've got a bit of variation in the colour. At the front here I've left it wider at the bust and brought it in narrower towards the waist, which will give the illusion of a slightly narrower waistline. And here, the sequin fabric actually gave us a nice hint here. It was already cut kind of lower at the front and then rising up towards the waist. This is where a corset would sit. It would probably sit lower and then come up over the hips across the waist. So I've followed that through with the sequins. Now to add a bit more sparkle to them, because they're not particularly shiny. They are all shiny, but you can't really see it on lots of them. I've got these little packs of sequins and rhinestones and a bottle of gem tack. I've also got some 3D pearl puffy paint in case I want to add a few. But I'm just going to sit here for a few more hours and get some more details on. To start fixing up the cape, I've carefully unpicked it from the back of the dress. I've also just snipped off the edge where they'd hemmed it in white. This fabric isn't actually a fraying fabric, so just cutting a neat edge is going to look a lot neater than having bright white stitching in there. Since it's non-fraying, I've also cut it into a nice slightly rounded shape at the bottom. And we're going to get the snowflakes on to give it a bit of a bigger detail over the gold and silver swirls. Okay, this was really hard to film and narrate, so you'll have to excuse the voiceover. I started by getting the cape set out on the floor, and I got loads of junk mail and stuck the pages together until I had a big enough piece of paper. I folded that in half so that I could get the design symmetrical down the centre back. I then just freehand sketched out the design for the top half of the cape. Obviously you could do this more neatly by measuring and using protractors and getting the angles right, but I decided to just wing it. For the snowflakes I did likewise. I got smaller pieces of paper, folded them in half and then in thirds to make, well, like when you made snowflakes back in primary school, and then drew the design on so that it would get mimicked across all six. And then I just cut these out of paper and transferred the design onto a non-fray, kind of semi-opaque mesh fabric that I had. With it transferred, I cut around each piece just to get them separate, but I left plenty of excess around all the edges so that I could pin each piece nice and securely on. I didn't want to try and fight with the cut edge, which is why I left loads of space. And then I sewed inside, just slightly inside of each red line, and trimmed it afterwards. Okay, so you can see I've got the design on the cape now. It's all nicely sewn down. It's pretty obvious now, but I still think it's a bit dull looking compared to the shiny of the original pattern. So I've got loads of sequins still, and I'm just going to get my gem tack and add some sequin detailing to all of it. So after all that, the cape is done. It's actually hard to show off the whole thing. You might be able to pick up the sparkle because I've put lots and lots of sequins on, and I've got all the snowflakes at the bottom. And then it's just a case of reattaching it. Thanks for watching the first part of this video. It's a bit long, so I'm going to release the second half soon. If you like what I'm doing, please do check out my Facebook page, please like and subscribe, and please do check out my Patreon page. See you in part 2!